Yahoo 2013 data breach. In August 2013, attackers quietly copied an entire backup of Yahoo's user account database. The file contained names, email addresses, telephone numbers, dates of birth, hashed passwords, and, crucially, security question answers. Since most of the hashes used the then robust bcrypt algorithm, the criminals switched tactics. They forged authentication cookies, allowing them to access accounts without ever cracking a password. Yahoo's monitoring failed to detect the exfiltration at the time. The company did not disclose the intrusion until September 2016 and only admitted in October 2017 that all 3 billion accounts had been affected, the largest single breach on record. The stolen data was later resold and reused to break into non-Yahoo services, demonstrating how one compromise can cascade across the internet. Target 2013 breach. On 15 November 2013, attackers infiltrated Target's corporate network using credentials phished from its HVAC contractor, Fazio Mechanical. After navigating weakly segmented internal systems, they installed RAM-scraping malware on approximately 2,000 point-of-sale terminals. Between Thanksgiving and 15 December, the code skimmed magstripe data as shoppers swiped their cards, capturing 40 million payment numbers and roughly 70 million sets of names, addresses, phone numbers, and email details stored in a parallel customer database. Alerting systems flagged anomalies on 30 November, but staff missed the warnings until U.S. law enforcement tipped off the company weeks later. Cleanup costs, fraud reimbursements, and class action settlements ultimately exceeded $200 million, underscoring the ongoing importance of supply chain security and effective network segmentation. Equifax 2017 breach. Attackers began probing Equifax's online dispute resolution portal on 10 March 2017, 3 days after Apache had shipped a patch for the critical struts vulnerability CVE 2017-5638. Because Equifax's asset inventory was incomplete, administrators never applied the fix. Exploiting the flaw, the intruders ran arbitrary commands, jumped laterally, and, over 76 days, siphoned databases holding names, social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, and, for millions, driver's license and credit card detail. Detection finally came on 29 July, when an expired TLS certificate was belatedly renewed, re-enabling outbound traffic inspection tools that immediately lit up with alerts. Public disclosure lagged until 7 September 2017, by which time 147 million consumers had been exposed, and the company faced record fines and a landmark $700 million settlement. The incident is now textbook evidence of the cost of ignoring basic patch management and certificate hygiene. Marriott/Starwood 2018 breach. Attackers first slipped into Starwood's reservation network in late 2014 and quietly sat there for almost 4 years, harvesting credentials and copying database tables at leisure. The activity went unnoticed through Marriott's 2016 acquisition of Starwood because due diligence scans focused on financial, not lingering domain admin accounts. On the 8th of September 2018, an internal security alert finally fired when a guest access application began issuing massive, unexplained queries. Forensic teams discovered a remote administrator account compressing and encrypting reservation tables, then exporting them in chunks. By the time Marriott disclosed the breach on November 30, 2018, records for roughly 500 million stays had been exposed. About 327 million unique guests lost combinations of name, mailing address, phone number, email, date of birth, passport number, loyalty account data, arrival, departure dates, and reservation metadata. Some payment card fields had been stored with AES encryption, but investigators found the key in the same directory, so protection proved moot. Marriott later deduplicated the trove to 383 million distinct individuals and admitted 5.25 million unencrypted passport numbers had leaked. Regulatory fallout was swift. The UK ICO initially proposed a £99 million GDPR penalty. The U.S. FTC and 49 states settled for $52 million in 2024, and class actions continue. The episode is now the cautionary tale for merger cybersecurity. Inherit a network. Inherit its breaches. Adobe's 2013 breach. In mid-August 2013, intruders exploited unpatched Cold Fusion servers inside Adobe's network. They soon located a legacy SQL interface that copied the entire customer authentication table to a staging directory. Using an employee VPN account, they exfiltrated the file and compressed archives of Acrobat, Photoshop, and Cold Fusion source code. The dump ultimately held 152 million user ID, email addresses, and 3 DES encrypted passwords, plus the plain text password hints that users had written themselves. Because Adobe had used the same salt for every hash, attackers and later researchers could pre-compute lookup tables. Within weeks, a third of the passwords were cracked, exposing that 123456 was the platform's top choice. About 2.9 million records also included encrypted credit card numbers and expiry dates. Internal monitoring flagged anomalous download traffic on 17 September, but users were not notified until 3 October 2013, when a forced global password reset finally occurred. Outside analysts matching leaked hashes with breach notification emails kept widening the scope until 153 million accounts were confirmed. Adobe settled consumer lawsuits for $1.1 million and paid another $1 million to 15 state attorneys general. A modest sum compared with the reputational damage of showing how weak cryptography and delayed detection exacerbate breach costs. LinkedIn's 2012 and 2016 breaches. On the 5th of June 2012, an unknown actor planted malware on LinkedIn's perimeter servers and pulled down a 6.5 million row credential table. The public leak seemed small, so LinkedIn forced only those users to reset passwords and moved on. 4 years later, security firm Hold Security found a 167 million record bundle from the same theft circulating on a dark market forum for 5 Bitcoin. For 117 million of those rows, the unsalted SHA-1 hashes were cracked within 3 days because LinkedIn had stored each password hash without any per-user salt or key stretching. Armed with fresh insight into password reuse habits, criminals then mounted credential stuffing runs against banking, SaaS, and social media sites worldwide. LinkedIn issued a full mandatory reset in May 2016, admitted it had never spotted the broader leak, and adopted bcrypt plus salting going forward. The episode is now cited in NIST password storage guidelines as the canonical lesson on why SHA-1 without salt cannot protect large user bases, even when you think the breach is only a few million rows. Capital One 2019 breach. Between 22nd March and 17th July 2019, software engineer Paige Thompson exploited a server-side request forgery path in a misconfigured web application firewall protecting Capital One's AWS-hosted credit application portal. By chaining the SSRF with temporary IAM credentials, she listed and copied 700-plus S3 buckets, ultimately pulling 106 million customer files, including 140,000 U.S. Social Security numbers, 80,000 bank account numbers, and 1 million Canadian social insurance numbers. Thompson saved the data to her personal GitHub repo under her screen name Erratic and bragged about it on Slack, leaving an audit trail the FBI traced after a bug hunter alerted Capital One on July 17th. The bank disclosed the breach on 29th July 2019, estimating response and litigation costs of $100 to $150 million US. 3 years later, it paid a $190 million US class action settlement and a separate $80 million US OCC fine. Technical postmortems cite the case as the archetype of cloud misconfiguration risk. A single WAF rule left in any IP mode allowed internal metadata queries, and default permissive IAM roles let a low-privilege process enumerate storage and exfiltrate data without triggering guard duty alerts. The incident drove both NIST and CIS to publish updated cloud hardening benchmarks emphasizing least privilege IAM, WAF egress filtering, and automated bucket policy auditing. Office of Personnel Management, 2015 breach. Attackers, traced by U.S. intelligence to a Chinese state-linked group, first gained foothold in OPM's legacy personnel records network in May 2014 and later pivoted into the agency's EQIP background investigation systems. Using stolen contractor VPN credentials and weekly segmented administrator accounts, they maintained persistence for roughly 11 months. During that window, they exfiltrated two distinct troves. One, personnel files of 4.2 million current and former federal employees, and two, background investigation records for 21.5 million individuals, including 5.6 million sets of fingerprints and the exhaustive 127-page SF-86 forms that catalog relatives, overseas contacts, psychological history, travel, and finances. Because intrusion detection sensors were offline for a data center migration, outbound transfers went unnoticed until April 2015. The compromise is regarded as the most damaging espionage breach in U.S. history. It furnished adversaries with a ready-made targeting database for coercion and intelligence recruitment. OPM Director Catherine Archuleta resigned on 10 July 2015. Congress earmarked U.S. $500 million for credit monitoring, and the agency remains on the GAO high-risk list pending full adoption of zero-trust architecture and privileged access control. Facebook 2019 leak. Throughout 2018 to 2019, threat actors abused Facebook's Contact Importer feature to enumerate user IDs and harvest the phone numbers, names, birth dates, locations, and profile metadata of 533 million accounts spanning 106 countries. Facebook quietly closed the enumeration flaw in August 2019, but never notified users because only public data were involved and no passwords were stolen. 2 years later, on the 3rd of April 2021, the entire scraped dataset resurfaced for free on a low-level hacking forum, instantly turning a long-resolved bug into a mass exposure event. Although the files lacked credentials, the combination of phone numbers and Facebook IDs fueled SIM swap, smishing, and account recovery attacks across other services, underlining that so-called open-source personal data can still pose acute security and privacy risks at scale. Facebook defended its no-notification stance by arguing the leak was old, yet regulators in Ireland and Italy opened GDPR probes and security standard bodies updated guidance on rate limiting and data aggregation defenses for social graph APIs. PlayStation Network 2011 breach. Between 17th and 19th April 2011, attackers slipped past Sony's perimeter controls and penetrated application servers that authenticated PlayStation Network, PSN, and CryoCity users. They copied a master accounts table containing roughly 77 million names, mailing addresses, email addresses, birth dates, PSN usernames, and salted hash passwords, and possibly some credit card detail. Sony discovered the intrusion on 19 April and, recognizing that it could not trust its own infrastructure, shut down the entire PSN on 20 April. The outage lasted 23 days, during which investigators rebuilt servers, rotated keys, and added intrusion detection sensors. Sony told Congress the cleanup and welcome back compensation program would cost about $171 million and later settled multiple class action suits. The breach became the textbook warning on how unpatched web servers, flat network architecture, and delayed disclosure can convert a single intrusion into weeks of global service paralysis and headline reputational damage. MOVEit transfer, 2023 mass breach. Beginning 27 May 2023, the CL0P ransomware gang leveraged a zero-day SQL injection flaw, CVE 2023-34362, in Progress Software's MOVEit transfer file exchange platform to execute remote code, create rogue admin accounts, and script automated downloads of every file uploaded by thousands of organizations in the preceding 30 days. Because many customers used MOVEit to shuttle daily payroll, insurance, and health benefit extracts, the stolen archives contained social security numbers, bank account details, medical data, and internal project files. Progress released a patch on 31st May, yet CL0P had already implanted web shells that survived updates. A second wave of exploits followed on 5th June when fresh vulnerabilities surfaced. By 26th October 2023, security firm MSISoft had tallied 2,559 victim organizations and 66 million named individuals, making it the largest supply chain data breach on record. Impact spanned U.S. federal agencies. CMS alone lost 3.1 million Medicare records, critical infrastructure utilities, global banks, and dozens of state governments. The incident forced emergency CISA advisories, prompted insurers to rewrite third-party transfer clauses, and moved regulators to draft rules requiring continuous vulnerability scanning of managed file transfer services.